Throughout Nazi Germany and Hitler's Third Reich, the dictator and his party had strong beliefs as to how women should act and behave. They tried to control what women wore, and even tried to coerce them as to have as many children for Hitler's empire as possible, with the hope that these sons of these women would become soldiers. It was clear by the Nazi beliefs that they wanted women to stay at home, look after the house and have children, whilst the men either worked or went away to fight. But there was one woman who Hitler was incredibly close to, and that was the wife of one of his closest friends, Joseph Goebbels. Hitler and Magda Goebbels had a very tight-knit friendship, and the dictator himself would provide the pair with marriage counselling and advice. But Magda Goebbels was a murderer, and she died alongside her husband in the same place as Adolf Hitler did, inside of the Fuhrerbunker. Join us today as we look at the disgusting crimes of Magda Goebbels, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Before marrying the head of Hitler's propaganda ministry, Magda was married before. She met Günther Quandt, who was a rich German industrialist and was also twice her age. She was around 19 and he was around 40, and Quandt would shower her in lavish gifts to win her affection. The pair did have a child, but Magda grew frustrated as her husband spent little time with her and instead favoured on working on his business. In 1929 her husband discovered that Magda had been having an affair, and the pair separated and then divorced, with Magda getting a handsome amount of wealth from her now ex-husband. But it was in 1930 when she would become obsessed and captivated by the Nazi Party and their ideology. She attended a meeting of the Nazis and was very impressed by a short man who was speaking and whipping the crowd up into a frenzy. This man was Joseph Goebbels, the Gauleiter of Berlin, and shortly after this she joined the party and got involved in some volunteer work for the Nazis. She was not really at this time politically motivated, but she then moved into the party's headquarters in Berlin and became a secretary to Hans Meinshausen, the deputy to Goebbels. But following her work with Meinshausen, she then began to take over more responsibility for Goebbels, and she looked after his own private papers. Whilst on a trip to Weimar along with friends, Magda and Joseph became romantic and intimate in February 1931. They then struck up a relationship. Joseph was a dreamer and believed that one day Nazism would take over Germany, and the pair would plan for their future together. Goebbels claimed in his diary that, "We've made a solemn vow to each other. When we've conquered the Reich, we will become man and wife. I am very happy." It was inside of Magda Goebbels' flat, along with her boyfriend, that many other high-ranking Nazis would meet and talk. Hitler would regularly frequent Magda's flat and would talk long into the night, joined by other members of the Nazi Party. Despite their relationship having problems, Goebbels actually became jealous that Magda was capturing the eye of Hitler, but nonetheless the couple married on the 19th of December 1931. Hitler would act as a witness, and as Hitler would wish to remain unmarried, many believed that Magda Goebbels would become the First Lady of the Third Reich. As she was becoming more politically ambitious, she along with her husband would become closely involved in the politics that she hoped for. As a close link to the senior hierarchy of power, Magda would get thousands of letters from women across Germany, many who asked for help with child custody issues, and others about domestic matters and even divorce. But it was clear that she was enjoying the life of luxury, and their Berlin home was remodelled, and they even brought other properties across Germany. Together Joseph and Magda had 6 children, even despite her husband engaging in many different affairs with actresses. She turned to Adolf Hitler about this, and Hitler would demand Goebbels broke off his affairs and focused on his marriage, as he could not allow one of his closest ministers and friends to be swept up in waves of scandal. The pair, though, despite getting back together, would regularly fall out. Now, as the Second World War broke out, Magda's eldest son, Harold Quandt, joined the Luftwaffe and was then captured by the Allies later on. After his capture, he would never see his mother again. She served as the First Lady of the Third Reich, as she would entertain dignitaries and also foreign heads of state, and support war widows, and also call for help for the German army. But both of the Goebbelses received much benefit from their close relationship with Hitler, but it was Magda who began to first doubt the war effort, as things were beginning to turn on the Eastern Front. She would, during a gathering of friends, hear a speech from Hitler and claim it was a load of rubbish. As 1944 came, and Hitler was seemingly leading Germany to defeat, Magda claimed that he no longer listens to voices of reason. Those who tell him what he wants to hear are the only ones he believes. But cruelly, Magda had a dark secret. Her own stepfather was Jewish, and she did not at one point attempt to save him, and it's believed that he actually died inside of a concentration camp. But Magda Goebbels was often ill, and during the war she was known to have suffered from depression and also nerve pain and neuralgia. Her condition affected her face, but this often led to her being hospitalised and also confined to her bed. She was a dedicated Nazi, and she would also publicly support the evil regime by doing many tasks alongside her husband, such as allowing meetings to take place in her home. But her greatest crime came in the final days of the Second World War in Europe, and took place inside of the Fuhrerbunker. In April 1945, Hitler had already confined himself to the bunker for a number of months, deciding that he would rather die in Berlin than attempt to break out. Joseph Goebbels made the decision also to stay with Hitler, then moved his family into the bunker. The family lived inside of the Fuhrerbunker, which was the upper level of the complex, found under the Reich Chancellery Garden. Inside there, Magda wrote to her eldest son Harold, who was being held as a prisoner of war in North Africa. She said, "Harold, my beloved son, by now we've been in the Fuhrerbunker for 6 days already. Your 6 little siblings and I, for the sake of giving our National Socialistic lives the only possible honourable end, you shall know that I stayed here against Daddy's will, and that even on last Sunday the Fuhrer wanted to help me get out. You know your mother, we have the same blood. For me there was no wavering. Our glorious idea is ruined, and with it everything beautiful and marvellous that I have known in my life. The world that comes after the Fuhrer and National Socialism is not worth any longer living, and therefore I take my children with me, for they are too good for the life that would follow, and a merciful God will understand me, that I will give them salvation. The children are wonderful. There never is a word of complaint nor crying. The impacts are shaking the bunker. The elder kids cover the younger ones. Their presence is a blessing. They are making the Fuhrer smile once in a while. May God help that I have strength to perform the last and hardest. We only have one goal left, loyalty to the Fuhrer, even in death. Harold, my dear son, I want to give you what I learned in life. Be loyal. Loyal to yourself, loyal to the people, and loyal to your country. Be proud of us and try to keep us in dear memory." It was clear that Magda had decided that she would never leave the bunker, but following the death of Hitler and Eva Braun, her husband would become the Chancellor. Inside of Hitler's last will and testament, it was said that Goebbels and his family should leave the bunker and should continue the Nazi government elsewhere. However, Joseph defied Hitler's final order, and along with his family decided to die inside the bunker. Magda was one of the last people to see Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun alive before they took their own lives. But the greatest crime she would commit would be the murder of her own children inside the bunker. It's clear that she and her husband had considered the step to kill their children for a while, and it was said that a month before she was even contemplating doing this. She told her sister-in-law that she was going to poison the children, and her great fear was that after the war they would be targeted for links to their father and the Nazi regime. She also feared what would happen if they fell into the hands of the Soviets after hearing stories of their brutality. It was said that Magda mentioned to her friend, "We will take the children with us. They are too good, too lovely for the world which lies ahead. In the days to come, Joseph will be regarded as one of the greatest criminals that Germany has ever produced." His children would hear that daily. People would torment them, despise and humiliate them. They would have to bear the burden on his sins, and vengeance would be wreaked on them. On the 1st of May 1945, they arranged for an SS dentist, Sturmbannführer Helmut Kunz, to kill the Goebbels children by injecting all 6 of them with morphine, so they would be sedated and unconscious. After this, it was planned that cyanide ampules would be crushed inside of their mouths, killing them. Kunz did as he was instructed, and said that although he gave the children the morphine injections, it was Magda and also Hitler's personal doctor, Ludwig Stumpfegger, who administered the cyanide. Another witness, a telephone and radio operator at the Fuhrerbunker, stated that he heard that Dr. Stumpfegger had given the children something sweet to drink, and that they were told that they were leaving Berlin for Berchtesgaden and the Berghof region in the morning. It was claimed by another that Magda Goebbels reassured the children, saying that they needed inoculations as they would be staying inside the bunker for a long time and would be susceptible to infection. It's believed that it was Magda Goebbels herself, though, who murdered her children. She was the one who was given the cyanide capsules and then crushed these into the mouths of her young children. There were accusations that the SS doctor, Ludwig Stumpfegger, was the one who administered the poison, but most historians believe that it was Magda Goebbels who did this. The children were all wearing their nightgowns ready for bed and were put in bunk beds before being injected with a sedative, and then they were poisoned with cyanide by their mother. Helga Goebbels was 12 when she was killed, Hildegard was 11, Helmut was 9, Holder was 8, Hedwig was 6, 4 days short of turning 7, and Haida was just 4. Magda would then tie ribbons in the hair of the girls, before she then took her own life, alongside her husband. The body of Magda Goebbels was found burned inside of the Reich Chancellery garden, and a few days after the deaths, the Soviets arrived in the bunker and discovered the bodies of her children. Magda Goebbels was a key member of the Nazi Party and was a sounding board at times for the dictator of Germany. She had a very close relationship with Hitler and was considered his best friend, but her greatest crime during the Second World War would take place inside the Fuhrerbunker as she murdered her own children. She also refused to do anything about the evils of the Nazi regime and was complicit in the horrors that they committed. Today, many of Magda Goebbels' crimes remain untold. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. And once again, thank you so much for watching.